Welcome to the Conscious Publicist Podcast, a space where thoughts become ideas to advocate for a more conscious human experience in the media. Our thoughts and ideas inspire action, and the most notable leaders and organizations have transformed thoughts and ideas into global initiatives that have impacted the lives of millions. My name is Ashley Graham, and as a woman-owned business founder and publicist, I guide leaders, visionaries, and creators in discovering their conscious media voice and methodologies that inspire connection, community, and impact through aligned media channels. In this podcast, we'll dive into public relations, thought leadership, business, and entrepreneurship, all through the lens of being a conscious human being. I'll take you behind the scenes into the habits, thoughts, and modalities that have helped leaders shift past paradigms of limiting beliefs, comparison, and self-doubt to show up for themselves to become the subject matter experts they were called to be. Subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify and join us on this journey of awakening the conscious, enlightened leader within you. You might be asking, what does it look like when a woman gets truly clear on who she is, what she's building, and why it matters? For today's guest, that answer came through identity, and it reshaped everything: her business, her rebrand, and now, as she steps into motherhood, her entire sense of self. Samantha Fackler is an intuitive business coach for women, host of the podcast Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur, and someone who has spent 14 years in Fortune 500 marketing before blazing her own path into entrepreneurship. What makes Samantha truly unique is how she blends her deep corporate expertise with astrology, human design, and intuitive insight to help women get crystal clear on who they are and where they're going, and then actually get there. In today's conversation, Samantha opens up about what it really means to know your identity in business and how getting clear on hers led to a complete rebrand, a podcast relaunch, and a season of ease that she describes as leaping 5 years forward. She also shares something deeply personal, what it's been like navigating the journey to motherhood as an intuitive woman, and how pregnancy has amplified her inner knowing in ways that are reshaping her business, her friendships, and her sense of self. This is one of those conversations that touches the heart of what it means to a woman, building something, becoming someone, and surrendering into the beautiful unknown of what's next. I have an amazing, wonderful guest for everyone today. Samantha is the podcast host behind Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur. She's a business coach, amongst many other things. And what I am so excited about our conversation today is she is about to become a mom. And given the season of life that I'm in, we're going to talk about motherhood, business, how both of those balance and blend into one another in a very intentional, beautiful way. So Samantha, welcome to the Conscious Publicist Podcast. To get us started, I'm going to ask you our $1,000,000 question today. What story and message are you looking to tell through your brilliance and your wisdom?
For having me, Ashley. What a beautiful intro. What story? I think the biggest thing that I come upon over and over again is that everyone's business is completely unique. And when I say business, that could also mean creative project, the way you show up as a personal brand, like whatever that looks like. I find that so many people get stuck because they're trying to do things in ways that people are telling them to do. You know, it's like, hey, use this system, use this tool, do this thing. But I find that over and over again, it's like what you're building has a unique fingerprint. So you need to figure out your way of doing it.
You actually have a program that's meant specifically to support people in this way as well, correct? It's called the Brand Edit.
I do. Yeah. And it's for that season of, you're really trying to nail down your identity, why and how you're different, and then how do you communicate that, both through messaging, positioning, but also through the brand that you have. So the look and feel, the visuals. And I think A lot of people get wrapped up in the word brand and think that it's a logo or think that it's a cute template that they'll use for a year. And that's not the case. It's so much deeper. So that's what the program, the Brand Edit, does.
I couldn't agree with you more that it goes so much deeper, which this is where I feel a good transformation of the conversation to get started would be, is that branding or a business is so much about identity. And I love how you talked about how a business can be so much more than just a business itself. It can be your creative projects. You and I are both in podcasting, and I almost feel that the platforms that we've created through podcasting are a business in some way, because you've had to take an amazing concept that came through an idea and shape it and transform it into a way that serves and impacts other people in whatever way that that's supposed to support them. Through here, I like to say that it's auditory support. We're bringing a lens to the conversation on where someone might be able to take the insights or the wisdom or the brilliance that they learn in these conversations and apply it into their own lives, whether that's personally or professionally. So tell me a little bit about how you support people with that identity component through the business or the brand, but then also how you've been able to do that for yourself. I know that you went through a rebrand with the podcast, so I know that you know the heart of identity and how to go from past identity into new identity.
Identity is such a big topic. And I think, especially right now, I'm 28 weeks pregnant. So I'm going through another identity transformation on top of the business. But I think to back up, when I think of business, it's an exchange. So even having a podcast, there's an exchange there. It is a business. If you're an author with a book, if you're an artist with collections, you have a business. There's an exchange. You're putting out something. People are consuming something, right? They might be giving you your time, energy. Maybe it's something that's paid. But that exchange is, I think, actually where people get confused about their identity. They get more focused on that exchange and systems and price points and, oh no, how many things am I going to sell? Or how can I grow this to attract more people? And they forget about themselves, the heart of it, the identity of what is being communicated here. What is the essence or the genesis of this entire thing that you have created? And so, I had this reckoning because I was a year or two into business, I think. And I've been in brand and marketing for 14 years. I went to school for marketing. I went to business school at the University of San Francisco. I've had many side businesses on top of my brand and marketing career. And so I know this stuff deeply. And I had this moment in my business a year or two in where I looked around and I was like, this doesn't feel right. This feels like I'm building something because it's supposed to be built this way, in air quotes, if you can see me. And I felt like what my stuff looked like on the outside did not feel how it felt on the inside. So like actually coaching people, sitting down with them one-on-one and learning about what they're building or growing, and really coming from a point, I'm a certified coach, but I also have this huge background. And I also have this really strong intuition that kind of guides me and makes me unique. But when I looked at my website, when I looked at the content I was sharing, I was like, there's no me in this. Like, what is my identity? Why am I different than the other business coaches out there, or the other people that talk about brand and marketing, or the other people who are intuitive, who have these sixth sense insights when they meet with clients? And so I had to take a step back and look at my own identity. And that is when I figured out kind of my sweet spot is the combination of these things. I'm not just a business coach. I'm not just a certified coach who knows how to guide people to their answers, right? I'm also not just an intuitive person who had an energy healing business at one point and is clairvoyant and clairsentient and has a lot of information coming in all the time when I'm meeting with people. It is this unique fabric of everything woven together. And so I had to do the work and actually walk myself through the process that I've walked through corporate companies, high growth startups, solopreneurs, exactly how I would walk others through it. I had to walk myself through it. And that was a huge rebrand moment. I figured out that my podcast actually had the wrong name. I wanted to rebrand it. It's now Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur. It's grown faster than ever after I renamed and rebranded it. Completely redid my look and feel so that it matched this unique positioning that I had. And because of that, my marketing then took off too, because I knew exactly what to say and how to say it. I knew my target audience. I wasn't confused trying to go after a target audience just because they have money or just because people told me that I should, right? I really had to sit with it. And that's when I was like, no, I want to focus on women who have an interest in spirituality, whether that's them interested in astrology or yoga or whatever that looks like, but they know there's something bigger. They know there's a reason they're showing up. And so once I got clear on all these things, everything like just, I want to say catapulted. You know, when people say they quantum leaped forward, I don't really love the term quantum leap, but it did feel like I leapt forward 5 years in my business because I saw the results. I saw everything come together. And that's when I realized I need to actually put this into a program for people so that they can go through it too. And so that's where the brand edit came to be. And so I not only relaunched my podcast, redid my website, redid all of my marketing, but I also launched a signature program all in one season. And that was also a lot and a challenge as a business owner. But I'm so glad that I did that because since then I've been in a season of ease because things are just working now that I know my identity and how it's communicated.
It's been such an amazing experience being able to watch that transformation and that identity transform on this end. I think when I got connected with you, it was just shortly before you had rebranded your podcast, and then all of the other things took form from there. But being able to watch it firsthand, like you can feel the clarity. And I think that that really speaks to the insight that you got on what you needed to do in order to create this new identity that felt and looked and embodied you as a whole.
Very sweet. I think when you're clear on your identity and you know it, there's a level of confidence that comes through because you understand, oh, this is what I meant to talk about in the way that I meant to talk about it. And this is who I'm talking to. And so suddenly you stand up taller, you speak in a different way. You don't feel cringe anymore. You know, you actually get to show up more like you. And I think it's so interesting because we talk all the time about like authenticity and showing up like yourself. But a lot of times people are forcing it because they just don't have that identity piece. But when you know that, everything becomes easier. And like you're saying, people feel it. And, you know, I've even felt that from you and watching you evolve too. And even just hearing your voice and your presence on this podcast, I'm like, yes, this is Ashley. You know, like this is where your gifts show up and your unique talents and skills for the world all kind of converge in this podcast.
I appreciate that. Thank you for seeing me in that way because it has taken a long time. And a lot of where I'm at in this season of my life, I really attribute it to feeling like I was recalibrated during my postpartum experience. And I'm sure this is a nice little transition into speaking to the motherhood component because I know that you've been speaking to where you already feel motherhood and expecting is changing you in so many ways. And so I'd love to bring insight there. But when a mom expecting or in the postpartum experience, or a mom who has become a mother in whatever way that she has been called to become a mom, when she says that she has felt that her life has changed in these most beautiful, unexplainable ways, believe her, listen to her, because that's not something that is said lightly ever. I mean, again, speaking to the identity component, you go through the biggest identity change. No longer is it about what you've done, who you've been, going through routines or making small adjustments here and there in your day to day. You go through, it's like a portal. It's a portal. Nothing looks the same. Nothing feels the same, but in the most beautiful, magical way possible, but also intimidating and kind of scary because the unknown is never comfortable. But there's so much that comes from it. And that's just really where I've been led. And I've had to shed a lot. I've had to go through my own traumas becoming a mother that I would have never been able to plan or prepare for. But I've been able to take that experience and really sit with what it is that I want for myself in this stage, what I want for my daughter, but then also how I really want to support others. And if it was not for how the path was laid in front of me, I don't think I would have that clarity. So I say all that to say is sometimes the clarity component doesn't come in the way that we think it does. Sometimes you have to kind of have to go through the trenches in order to find that clarity component, and that by design what my path looked like.
I'm obviously not a mom yet. I'm about 3 months away, give or take, when baby girl wants to arrive. But I've noticed, I've always had this thought that when you become pregnant and become a mom, it's like the day that your child is born, this massive change happens. And that is true to an extent. But I've also felt this identity change happen pretty much from the moment that we conceived. And it's been this gradual change in how I'm operating and how I'm viewing things. And so I'm trying to hold that with grace and a lot of flexibility, because I know there's just more change coming. And like you said, sometimes there's these moments of uncertainty. And I keep coming back to this image of Alice in Wonderland falling. And it's like, she doesn't know which way's up. She doesn't know where she's going or what's happening, but she lets herself fall. And I think that's actually the image and the character that I keep coming back to is, can I just let myself fall into this gracefully and see how this changes me, my life, and even my business in certain ways?
That's actually such a beautiful image. I'm reminiscing on what that scene is, and you can see that when she's about mid-fall, almost to the end, doesn't her dress kind of poof up and she just ends up floating, and she's just like, well, let's just see where this takes me. It's almost like this, I'm blanking on the word here.
There's like an acceptance of, okay, yes. Here we are.
The word that oh my gosh, that was just escaping me, was surrendering. She surrendered into it. And I feel that is what I think just conception journey, but then also expecting in those early months leading all the way through the end when the baby is born, is you really just need to surrender into it, because nature is a beautiful, wonderful thing. Nature knows what it's doing. Your body knows what it's doing, and that baby knows what it's doing. And oftentimes we think that mothers, especially during the nesting period, oh my goodness, we think that we can have it all figured out, that we have the registry perfect, and that we're going to have everything that you need. When that baby comes, you'll realize that you have no idea what you actually need until the baby comes. And so there's just all these little things that you're just like, okay, I can think it's going to go this way, but I will be surprised. And you just surrender and you just move and ebb and flow through the process. And it's wonderful, but uncomfortable. And both can be true and beautiful simultaneously with one another.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting the way that you said that, because I'm getting this image of kind of like motherhood, nature, and business, all three kind of follow that. In nature, there is an element of unpredictability. I think especially now, it's like you don't know if you're going to have a season that's super dry or super wet, and how that might affect the vegetation and the life and the cycle of things, or if an invasive plant comes in and completely changes the landscape over a short or long time. With business, I had such a preconceived notion of what entrepreneurship would feel like, coming from a very long career and having different side businesses. And then when I was fully in entrepreneurship, I was like, oh, actually, this is so different. And I have to change the way I move through this. And I can't always see a year or 3 years ahead. And I have to be okay with that. And then with motherhood, it's amped up 100 times when you include the emotions and the hormones and just how it affects everything. I'm trying to stay curious as I move through this, and especially that newborn period.
Thinking about your episode that you had recorded and published, talking about the conception journey, and when you found out that you were expecting, it was such a beautiful story. And thinking about the timelines are never linear. And what you were talking about with entrepreneurship, we can have this preconceived notion that you're just like, oh, I've been in corporate. This will be the easiest transition in my life. I've done hard things. This will be great. But it's just a whole new foundation. And similar with you, you were talking about your conception journey that you were like, oh, I thought it was you track your cycle. We're going to start trying. And then you get pregnant and then you're like, dun, 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 baby. But you realize you're like, no, kept checking my cycle, not pregnant. Kept checking my cycle, not pregnant. And you're just like, we don't talk about that as much. This is why I love conversations like this, because they're illuminating in the sense where you're breaking out an old paradigm. Sometimes we just think it's so linear, that it's so easy, but there's more to be discovered in that process. And I feel that's what a lot of that entails. And going into your business and kind of naturally seeing how things just came together, and with you being an intuitive, do you feel that all of that clarity came through because it was setting your business and your brand and the podcast up for a strong foundation before baby decided to come through? Because that's how it kind of feels for me, that it's like that waiting initiation period was because all of these other things had to become so solid. And then baby was like, okay, now I just need to add even more glimmer into this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's such a reason to timing, and sometimes that's a really hard thing to grasp because you want timing to be different. And so for me, I had this season, I almost call it not necessarily a masculine season, but a season where I was working really hard. All this stuff took a lot of time and effort to change and implement. I was busy. I was working longer days than usual on top of working with clients and even doing marketing advisory work with some corporate companies. And on top of all that, I was working with an acupuncturist and a fertility nutritionist and mentally preparing to start our journey of trying to conceive. And then like all this stuff went out around the time that we started trying. So the podcast was relaunched, the website was out, the signature program was launched. And in my head, I was like, okay, we're into the next season. Like all this stuff has officially launched. It's the next day. Where's baby? And that's just not how things work. And it took, I think, 5 or 6 cycles to conceive. And across those, every month, I was disappointed every time I got my period and was like, oh man, I've been preparing for this in my business. I've been preparing for this in my body. I've been eating so clean and doing all these things and taking all these supplements and stuff. And it wasn't until last September I had a breakdown moment over it, because I had thought that it would be such a quick thing, because the women in my family have always gotten pregnant pretty much on the first try. And so when I was on the 4th try and then the 5th try, I was like, what's going on here? And I remember I took myself to Joshua Tree for just a 1-day meditation, because for me, meditation is the space where I connect with my intuition and pull off all the layers that are on top of truth. And that is when I realized I've been doing all the things that I've been told I should do, like the ovulation sticks and tracking my cycle and temperature. What if I just let all of that go? And what if I even let go of this timing and this expectation for baby? Maybe baby's not supposed to show up right away. Maybe they'll show up in a year, or maybe they'll show up in a completely different way. I don't know. So I let go of all that stuff. I even let go of eating in a rigid way for my hormones. And I just started eating intuitively. This isn't advice. This is my journey. Around October, my husband came in and he was like, hey, do you want to do a little meditation together? And we had cacao and we pulled some oracle cards. And I had this moment with my intuition, because after all that work and this moment in Joshua Tree and kind of slowing down, I was able to intuitively tap in even more. And I really felt these baby spirits came in, and we had this conversation with these 2 little spirits. And I was kind of translating for my husband, because I could kind of feel them and hear them and could then relay to my husband what they were saying. We could respond. And it was just this beautiful conversation. It was almost like an agreement. One of them was like, I don't really want to do Little League. Because David would say all the time that he was so excited for Little League. And so then David and I had to be like, it's okay. You don't have to do Little League. We're not going to make you do anything that you don't want to do. We're here to nurture you and support you in whatever your path looks like. And that was the night that we conceived. And looking back, it was such a lesson for me in letting go of the timing, maybe even letting go of all the quote systems or things that are supposed to support that new life, whatever that is. And so this whole pregnancy, I've come back to that. And that's been such a pillar for my experience. And so sometimes letting go of conventional advice or wisdom and just really listening to my body and what my intuition is telling me.
I love that story so much. This is why I keep my microphone muted, because I'm over here giggling, laughing, and I hate when that interrupts the real heart of what someone's saying. That's why I keep my microphone muted. But I'm just thinking back to listening to that episode, and I was doing dishes, really in the zone while I was listening to that episode. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is just so magical. The cacao and the surrendering. I mean, it's such a profound experience. And like we were talking about with the image of Alice as she's falling, surrendering, I know that's a term that's used so often in spiritual mindfulness spaces and conversations. And I know that a lot of people wonder, how do you surrender? And surrendering, I feel, is different for everybody. Me, with surrendering, with trying to bring my daughter into the world, I was a little bit more feisty. I spoke out into the ethers and was like, you know what? You're putting your mother through a lot already by trying to come through and then leaving, because I've experienced 2 miscarriages. I can laugh about it now, but during the thick of it, I was like, this is not funny. This is not funny. And so I was just like, you're putting your mom through a lot. I need you to decide. And then I got even more sassier and I was like, you know what? I'm deciding. We're taking a break. And then the next month, pregnant. So say all that to say, sometimes surrendering you could be a little sassy, and I was just crying and being a brat, speaking to the ether. I was like, I know you can hear me. I know you can hear me. I need you to decide, because I'm done. I'm taking a break, closing shop down. And so, adding some humor, but surrendering can really be just whatever you feel in that moment looks like. It could be speaking just to conceiving. It could be just like you were saying, stop tracking and stop being so rigorous with this routine or being hard on yourself. I mean, being hard on yourself is so much more than just being on a schedule or whatnot, but also just be kind to yourself mentally, speak to yourself more kindly, more sweetly, being like, this isn't your fault. It's not in my control, because sometimes it really isn't. And I know that this experience is so emotional for so many women. And with my new newsletter called The Postpartum Voice, I really open up the narrative of that show to talk more, not necessarily just the postpartum experience, but just how complex it is being a woman who goes through a cycle from the minute that we're in our preteen years, right? Our bodies, in its code, is designed to bring children into the world. And there's already that layer that every single month you're reminded of that. And so there's this conversation like internally that happens that, again, it should be so easy. It should be so easy by the time I make the decision to bring a child in. And then you add on the society component and then the familiar component of conversations and friendships, and you start to see all of these experiences in life happening around you. And I say all that to say, any woman who does want children or has made a decision not to have children, there is so much sovereignty in that decision and in that experience. And I feel that the more empowered that you can be to make that decision, the better. And it allows you to have more grace for yourself. I was kind of bridging in 3 different conversations in that statement. But to bring it back to a grounded place here is women deserve to have more grace for themselves and to be surrounded by people who can also have grace and give grace to them as well.
I think the more you can do that for yourself too, then also the more that the women around you see that and can give themselves more grace. And I think that women in general, when we look at history and especially the last few generations, we've been really hard on ourselves. We got the right to vote and then we started working. And then when we started working really hard because we had to prove ourselves in environments that we're not used to having women in it, in that world. And I think still that's the case to an extent, but it's like we've had to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps in the work world. And also we're typically the CEOs of home life. And so we've been straddling these two worlds of being mothers or deciding not to be mothers and then facing your own pressures from people around you that think differently for whatever reason. Women have so much on their shoulders. And I think we are moving into a season where we're recognizing that and starting to create spaces that are more designed for women and what we want our lives to look like. And I think because of technology and all sorts of things now, we have a lot more freedom in deciding how do we want to work? What are the cultures that we want to show up and work in? We're more educated now. I think women, I think in general in the United States, like women, there's a majority of women with higher degrees now. And I'm really proud of women. Like they're the center of my business for a reason. I care so much about women being successful. And it's going to be very interesting to become a mother because I think this dual world experience of being a mother and being a business owner is probably going to come to the forefront of my work because it's such a unique experience that has its own pressures.
I can't wait to connect with you, say 6-8 months down the road while you're in postpartum, thriving in motherhood, thriving in business, and getting even more insights of the recalibrations, the identity shifts. And I don't know, it's all just so beautiful. And I'm very, oh my goodness, I'm going to be sitting at the edge of my seat just waiting to kind of hear you transmute and talk about what that experience is like. But one of the things that I had this kind of saved in the back of my mind to talk about, and I feel just what you said really brings this to the surface, but I feel that you're already going through that recalibration of what you want in that season while pregnant, as far as the types of support systems that you want, the type of friends that you want, the understanding, the support, the encouragement that you're looking for. Again, going back to the transition period of a woman becoming a mother, you think that the biggest awakening happens the minute that the baby is in your arms, but it really does start well before, sometimes often before conception, sometimes in the initiation period while the baby is in the womb. If you're open to it, would you talk a little bit about what that experience has been like?
Oh, if I'm open to it, of course. For me, a big thing has been intuition. So I talk about that a lot. But about 5 years ago, I'd say I went to a meditation retreat. And in that retreat, I was able to really connect to this part of me that I had felt over time. Over time, it was little gut instincts or little moments where I'd hear my own voice in my head tell me something really clear and resonant that rang like a bell in my body. And it was a clear sign or something like, do this. Or I remember I was like going through a messy breakup and it was like, this is good. And I needed to hear that quick, pragmatic voice that rang like a bell in my body. And this meditation retreat actually allowed me to reestablish trust with that. And that is what I know as my intuition. It's this sixth sense that I believe everyone has. And over time, when you start to trust that more and more, it becomes clearer and clearer. And becoming pregnant, that has amplified. I talked a little bit about connecting with baby spirits around the time we conceived, but becoming pregnant, it was also, all of a sudden I can tune into people on a deeper level. I can tune into myself on a deeper level. And I started seeing even my business, my friends, all different parts of my life from this lens that felt different. It's like I see those glasses that have different lenses you can put on, and maybe one's blue and then one's yellow, and then you see green through them. It was like someone had put a new lens that was intuition first in my life. And on the business side, I had thought that I would move through pregnancy in a certain way and mat leave would look a certain way. And I immediately realized, oh, that's not the case. And I'm going to let go of one of my core team members because her energy is not working with mine and it's actually impacting my business. This live program I do, this is going to be the last time I do it live. Like I just started to see all these decisions in my business really clearly. And then in my life, I saw that too. I started to see certain people, friends, where I was like, this has been a one-way friendship. Or actually, I don't really like hanging out with this person. I think I want some more distance here. And when I look back now and when I sit with it, it's almost like my baby has been my coach through this because it feels like she's the one who's, nope, we're going to snip this thread and this thread. We're going to let go of these people. We're going to make some room for new friends or new space in your life, new energy. And that's been so cool to experience. And all of those things, all of those changes have felt so good. And so it's, again, coming back to this intuition piece in my body. And I think my body's intuition has amplified specifically. Like I've always been clairsentient, clairvoyant, even had mediumship capabilities that I've played around with in my personal life. But my body has become this very clear instrument of understanding, do I go left or do I go right?
I love the body component. You had actually said that in that episode. You were like, I am so much more in my body than you felt like you had been previously. You're like, I'm just in this deep knowing space here in the center. And I was so in my body during pregnancy, almost to a point where it was just, I needed to feel into everything that was happening. You're so aware of it because you're noticing all these changes all the time, the hormones, the fluid level rises in your body, all the things. You just start noticing, you're like, oh, wow, okay, my body is taking form. Then all of a sudden you pop and you're like, okay, I went from normal belly into all of a sudden this big old bowling ball. And it's interesting because that does not go away when the baby comes out. And I can't even begin to even try to explain this from the scientific level of what I've read and listened to during my postpartum season, but I really truly believe that you and that baby are tethered for the rest of your life. What that baby feels, you feel. And, add being an intuitive on top of it, and you can just feel energy in the room, and then you can feel how your baby is responding for how you need to respond for them, and then also for yourself. It amplifies to the nth degree. And I think that's such a beautiful experience. It is no longer just about you and channeling your own energy and what you're receiving as far as input and downloads and hits and all these things. You are now connected to that child, and you are paving this path forward, not just in your environment, not just as far as safety and security, but energetically showing them how they should feel and need to feel secure in their body, in their emotions, in their nervous system. Like I said, I can't even begin to try to talk about the science behind it, but there is a code, call it a soul contract, as far as the channel of communication for that child. But in the physical, it changes significantly. And it's something that's very beautiful, being an intuitive, being able to experience, but then also really truly understanding that your genetic code, your makeup, your DNA is now forever changed because of that child.
Even if you have a daughter, your DNA, your health, the snapshot of what things look like the moment you conceive, that's actually going to be passed down through her eggs too. So it affects not just the generation that you're giving life to, but the generation after too. And I remember when I learned that, I felt like I had all these visions of all these patterns and connections of the women before us, the women that come after us. And yeah, it's so beautiful. It's so cool. And I think the intuition piece too, absolutely, you have a tether. I know when I did more energy healing work, it's like Most people in their sacral chakra have the cord that goes to their parents. And it's why if something happens to your parents, you might intuitively pick up on that. It goes from you to them as well as from them to you too. Sometimes I get a little nervous entering that season as an intuitive because you already take in so much information. So part of me is, oh, wow, there's a whole other world that's about to open in terms of what my intuition is going to be taking in and operating from. But I think remembering when your intuition amplifies in whichever way, grounding is so important, and coming back to a sense of presence and space and getting your feet outside in the earth then allows you to actually make that channel even more clear and can actually reduce anxiety. And so I know when I had like more of my intuitive awakening and had different things come online, that was such a big part of the way that I moved through that with more grace. And so as I think about this period and that tether happening, that's one of my intentions.
There's something really to the grounding component. And I feel this is like common what I'm speaking to recently. I don't know if I'm going to keep this in one of my other episodes. I might end up deleting it, but I had met with a intuitive reader, and it was pretty profound. The reason why I love connecting with other intuitives is because even as an intuitive myself, sometimes it's always hard to see your own areas of where maybe too much energy output is happening versus input, or protecting and grounding more. And so this intuitive reader, she really she showed me, she was like, you need to start protecting your crown chakra more. There is way too much energy that is actually leaking out. You need to protect it. You need to hold it in because it's being taken out. And she's like, that's a space that you need to preserve and protect. And when I matched that to some of the things that I was working through, both for myself, but then also reclaiming my power in certain ways through some actions that I was taking, it made sense. And she was like, I can't really explain to you what I feel is leaking, but you've got energy leaking. And I was like, oh, that is being siphoned out of me. That is not just leaking, that is being taken out of me just from the circumstances and the powers and the influences at be. And so I've started wearing silk coverings on my head if I've gone out and about, or I started wearing summer hats way early, or when I'm at home doing anything on the computer, I'll have a silk bonnet, like a mulberry silk bonnet on my head, and it makes such a difference. And I say all that to say is I'm in that season myself of, okay, how can I bring in different rituals that help me stay grounded while there's still all of this recalibration happening? And when you label it as the postpartum experience, it can take up to 2 years just for your hormones to rebalance. And so when you talk about the spiritual part of that and the identity part of that and the energy, it's, oh my goodness. Okay, so I need to really start thinking about grounding rituals and things that I've never done before just to protect the sovereignty of this space in this chapter. So it's fun. It's fun. And it's, like I said, it's uncomfortable, but you're just like, okay, whatever I'm preserving, whatever I can preserve in this moment is just going to set you up more for success. It's going to set your child up for success. And then when you feel connected in all those areas, then your business, your platforms, or whatever it is that you're creating and co-creating, it really brings more power and more beauty and more magic to that as well.
Absolutely. It's so interesting that you share that because from a spiritual perspective, energetic perspective, when you give birth, even as you progress through pregnancy, your crown chakra is blown open. I was just reading a book called Spirit Babies, and towards the end, he talks about what's happening in the birth process from that lens. And he's basically saying, like, all women who give birth, there is a part of you who is like a birth shaman who says, hey, little soul, it's time for you to enter, this body and enter the world. And you escort them through, you create this safe passage. And so your crown chakra is wide freaking open to facilitate this process. And so it makes so much sense that after it's, wait, all this recalibration has happened. You're taking in so much information. Your intuition is blown open, connected to this being that you've just given birth to. Now, how do you land from that, right? Like Alice, like how do you land in this new world and start to make sense of it, even when it doesn't make sense at times? I also love how often Alice in Wonderland has come into this conversation now.
Well, Samantha, oh my goodness, this conversation is as beautiful as I sensed and felt it was going to be. Again, I want to be mindful of time. Is there anything else that you want to speak through in this conversation today, whether it be about business, about co-creation or creation, and or just simply being a mom and what you're excited about with the spiritual activation part, but then also just bringing a beautiful soul into the world?
There's such a sense of awe that I continue to feel at being a woman, being pregnant, bringing a child into this world. This morning, I was sitting with a hand on my belly, hand on my heart, just tuning into the fact of like, I'm so excited to be this child's mother and support them and nurture them. And on the business side, having so much grace and understanding, maybe I'll start to advise people more on the spiritual side. I think my last thing that I'll share just with listeners is talk to someone. If you're going through this, if your crown chakra feels crazy, or you're trying to find grounding, or you're trying to figure out how to find your feet in your business and as a mom, this is the time to not just go through all those things in your head and get spun up in it, but actually start to move, right? Like, how do you actually start to take steps and explore, okay, where do I go with this? And I think women are supposed to be connected to other women. We're truly built to be in a village and have that connection. So talk to each other, find peers. If you can't find someone to talk to about spiritual stuff, find different communities that feel like a good fit. Don't be afraid to say, actually, this isn't a good fit, because I think when you can find others like us and our connection, like it just feels so beautiful. It allows this conversation to happen. It allows other women to hear this and hopefully provide some sort of validation or even just a little uplift in their daily experience.
I couldn't agree more. And mothers and women need more mothers and women in their circle just to reflect back to them where they can be empowered, where they can see the beauty and the magic in themselves. And I love exactly what you said. And for anyone listening, this is really what I hope the podcast can continue to transform into, is be in that space to listen to amazing guests who are going through the experiences that maybe you're in the thick of right now, that you can find a path forward, feel supported just through hearing somebody else's story, but then also reflect back on anything and everything that you might need support in. And I hope this can be the space for you.
Absolutely. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for having me. You have such a calm and beautiful presence as a host. And so I feel like I've been on a lot of podcasts, but this has probably been one of my favorite conversations ever.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for just seeing me and sharing that. That's the greatest affirmation that I could ever hear. And talking about figuring out and seeing what works and what doesn't. Like, the podcast is the place where I feel like I was always meant to nurture and thrive. And it really, at the heart and soul of it, I have always found joy in highlighting other people's stories and reflecting back to them their brilliance and their wisdom. That's why the icebreaker question exists to begin with, is because I see so much beauty and magic in people, and I want this platform to be that affirmation for them, but then also to open it up to people who could also support them in whatever ways that they're looking to be supported in. So thank you again for seeing me and witnessing me in that way. It truly means a lot, especially in this season that I'm in.
Of course. Yes, these are your gifts. This is definitely your path.
Thank you so much, Sam.